Star Wars has been in the news a lot lately. Announcements about the new movie are cropping up everywhere, and we're all gearing up in the hope of not getting Phantom Menaced again. With Disney closing down LucasArts and in doing so cancelling Star Wars 1313, who knows when, and I suppose if, we'll get another Star Wars video game. I mean, Disney aren't about to kill the goose that laid the golden egg, and we do still have Battlefront to look forward to. But can we expect the same degree of expertise in the far future, or will we be subjected to subpar movie tie-ins in which Tier C characters are wheeled out in the vain hope of getting some traction with the fanbase? LucasArts and a handful of other developers have a long pedigree of rock-solid titles stretching all the way back to some of the earliest examples of video gaming. And with LucasArts now gone, all bets are off as to whether we as gamers are going to continue to receive games to the same degree of quality. Star Wars games have nearly always been good. Usually, in fact, they're excellent, which is something that cannot be said for rival franchise Star Trek, which has literally never had a good game. As the game show's resident Star Wars expert, I trawled through my own enormous catalogue of Star Wars video games and tried to come up with 5 of the best titles, which sum up the highest degrees of quality from within the Star Wars franchise. It wasn't easy. Even if I'd wanted to come up with a list of 10, I would have struggled, and there's almost always certainly going to be some heated discussion about the choices I've made, but there we have it. This is Red 5, I'm going in. Super Star Wars is definitely the first Star Wars video game designed to be a good video game first, and less of a squeezing at the cash cow's teat. Telling a rather lavish and embellished version of the Star Wars movie trilogy, these are the only games on my list which could be considered even close to the official George Lucas canon. In each game we play the young Luke Skywalker as he fights to defeat the evil Galactic Empire. The second and third games introduce more playable characters, but most importantly introduce unlockable force powers for Luke, and kind of started that whole hybrid RPG style that became such an important part of Star Wars games still to come. The games are harder than Bullseye and Womp Rats in your T16, but I think that has allowed them to remain worthy games even in the long years since their release. The game that's making the list here is Super Empire Strikes Back, for several reasons. It's based on the best film in the entire franchise, Boba Fett is in it. It was the first game to give you level codes, and the vehicle sections are wicked. Oh, and the bosses are absolutely sick. Darth Vader is the final boss on Cloud City, whereas that mentally hard Emperor from Super Jedi, that's just stupid. To list the best Star Wars games but not mention Rogue Squadron would be a crime befitting the scruffiest of nerf herders. However, like a lot of the N64's back catalogue, Rogue Squadron hasn't aged all that well. Many of the missions are hampered by muddy visuals, choppy controls, and a painstakingly low frame rate that frankly doesn't feature in most people's rose-tinted memories of this game. However, Factor 5's 2 GameCube sequels, Rogue Leader and Rebel Strike, do not suffer from this one bit. One of the most outstanding space shooters ever made, let alone a rock-solid Star Wars game, Rogue Leader practically remakes the N64 game level by level, making up for all the misgivings the original title was guilty of, and delivering a game so gorgeous it still looks impressive by today's standards. The true pinnacle of the series though is the immense ship-to-ship combat that the third game offers. Fans have been calling for a new Rogue Squadron for some time now, but shy of just cramming all the ships and levels from the previous games into one title, I don't think there's anything new the game could do that this series hasn't already accomplished. The 90s was a phenomenal decade for PC gaming. It was also a phenomenal decade for Star Wars games, and the crossover between the two was always going to be something special. X-Wing is a DOS-based shooter which puts the player in the pilot's seat for the first time and sends them on dangerous missions against the Empire. The move LucasArts took next though was pitting us as the bad guys in the far superior TIE Fighter series, introducing a post-Return of the Jedi storyline where the Empire exists after the destruction of the second Death Star. TIE Fighter tells the story of the power vacuum left in the wake of the Emperor's death, as seen from the front lines of battle. Grand Admiral Thrawn is your ruthless commander, and the story between the excellently crafted missions is almost as exciting as the gameplay itself. When I built my retro rig recently, TIE Fighter was the first game I installed and played. Speaking of playing the bad guys, no game manages to put so human a spin on the faceless masses of Imperial pawns as Battlefront 2. Pandemic Studios already made an astonishing game in Star Wars Battlefront, but its sequel took the whole series to a whole new level by introducing a narrative campaign as seen through the eyes of a veteran Imperial trooper. The story opens with our soldier reminiscing over his time as a clone trooper during the days of the Senate, and serves as a vehicle to illustrate the metamorphosis of the Republic to the evil Galactic Empire. As the story unfolds, we're shown exactly how the clone troopers are used as a tool less for the protection of the Republic, and more for the subjugation of its people. As the troopers force regime changes, execute the remaining Jedi, and oversee the construction of a technological terror, we're given a neat narration through the eyes of our nameless protagonist, which informs of duty and honour in the face of any moral imperative. As the clone troopers are slowly replaced with inferior stormtroopers, much to the chagrin of the proud fighting clones, we're shown the formation of the Empire proper, and we witness the beginnings of the rebellion. Rather, from this vantage point, we see the actions of rash terrorist scum striking from their hidden base. Seeing these familiar events from the other side of the fence gives gives a unique and welcome perspective to the Star Wars universe. Oh, and this is the only Star Wars game that lets you play as everybody's favourite badass, Boba. While Super Star Wars had introduced us to the world of being a Jedi, I feel it was the Dark Forces Jedi Knight games that truly gave us a feel of what a Jedi was capable of. The journey of Kyle Katarn from Padawan to Jedi Knight through the Dark Forces games was then continued in the series highlight Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast. I suppose series naming conventions got thrown out of the window on that one, as really the game should have been called Dark Forces 3 rather than Jedi Knight 2, but I think we've got a bit of a Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare 2 scenario here. Despite the wonky nomenclature, Jedi Knight 2 is the best example of the third-person action game out there. A smidge darker than your usual fare, LucasArts built so solidly on the framework of its two predecessors that I don't think a lightsaber slash 'em up before or since can beat this game on the scope, story or raw playability on offer. Force Unleashed may have had all that outstanding technology behind it, but the lightsaber handling in Jedi Knight 2 felt so good and so real the first time I played this. Fighting other Jedi is always a fantastic affair, as each opponent uses different blade stances or combat styles, leaving Kyle with no go-to strategy for fighting them. This causes the player to mix up their game often mid-battle to cope with the challenges set. Everything in Jedi Knight 2 just bleeds that Star Wars magic, and in my opinion it's the absolute pinnacle of the Star Wars game. Okay now fans, I know there's a ton of Star Wars games I've missed. Like I said, this reflects the games I personally rate the highest. I've had enough games on my shortlist to make 2 videos at least, so perhaps I'll put together a part 2 at some point in the future. Thanks for watching guys. The Force will be with you, always.